Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Megan Lax and I am a professor at Family Medicine at ECU. For those who don't know, ECU actually has a collaboration with GFR for the next couple years, but while we are kind of pausing that program because of everything going on with the virus right now, we wanted to have some type of way to check in with you all continuously and just make sure that you all know that we're still here for you if you all have anything that you ever want to talk about. And so one way that we thought we could do this, since we can't be with you all in person, is to kind of send weekly or maybe even bi-weekly check-ins about different topics that could be helpful. So I'm envisioning these being very short, so maybe around 5 minutes, and just kind of covering a wide variety of topics that could be hopefully applicable to your lives right now and kind of what's going on. And we are calling these Tailboard Talks, and they're just kind of, like I said, check-ins to kind of hopefully make sure that we are still kind of keeping in touch. And if there's anything that you all want to talk about, that you still have access to us and that we are still here for you. So the broad purpose of what I'm hoping these talks will include is that they will provide practical tips, encouragement, and support. So like I said, less than 5 minutes, just really kind of casual and informal information that hopefully can be helpful to you all during such uncertain times right now. Before we kind of get into a couple of the tips that I have for today, I was thinking that we could just kind of generally look at kind of the impact of kind of what's going on in the world right now, especially as we look at kind of how this has impacted America. So some recent research that has come out is that about 72% of Americans report that their lives have been disrupted by the coronavirus. That is probably not too surprising to most of you. But maybe that's more surprising is that about 45% of Americans report that the pandemic has had a negative impact on their mental health. So I think I really want to highlight this because I think we want to make sure to recognize that a time like this is often going to exacerbate mental health challenges. So if someone is suffering from anxiety or depression or insomnia or things like that, before this happened, those problems are likely to get worse right now for a lot of reasons. You can see on this list here that there are a lot of different kind of challenges and changes that people are trying to cope with right now, such as people that are now kind of forced to homeschool children of different ages, and sometimes even doing that while working remotely and carrying on their regular kind of duties and responsibilities. There's a lot of fear about unemployment, even if it's not for yourself, but maybe for people that you care about. There's a lot of financial stress that can come along with that, of course. And then just the increase in isolation. So we know for depression and anxiety and a lot of just general our health as human beings, being in isolation is not really good for us. We like connection. It's good for us to have connection with other people and with activities that we enjoy. And so given kind of the current constraints that we have, and needing to kind of stay home and away from people and away from kind of activities, that increase in isolation can really exacerbate mental health problems. And you might notice this with yourself or your family members. You might even notice this an increase with your patient population, that oftentimes being at home, if it's not a good home environment or a supportive, whether that's emotional or physical safety environment, could really increase and exacerbate mental health challenges. So that might be something that you notice arise in for your patient population. And also just general worry about family and friends. So even if you're not worried about your own health, you could be worried about family or friends that might be in a different risk category than you, and just that constant kind of being worried about them and what's going on. And then lastly, we are inundated by news and media right now. And so there are constant briefings coming out. There's constant information that's kind of being thrown our way. And at this point, we have to be more diligent and intentional about avoiding that information than seeing it. And so a lot of times we're getting a lot of information very quickly, and it's constantly changing, and a lot of it's negative. And so we want to keep in mind that there's a lot of things being thrown at us right now, and we need to make sure that we're recognizing if that's causing a negative or a positive impact on our emotional health. So just a couple things to kind of be considering when thinking about kind of the impact of the coronavirus on kind of how you're doing and your friends and family right now. So I want to cover a couple topics today that I hope will be helpful. Today's reminders, the first one is kind of remembering that coping is unique to each person. So some people are the type of people who want to know all the research, all the statistics. They want to know where the numbers are in every county, every day, if there's a change. They really want to be on top of the news and really kind of knowing what the new information is and what it's saying and what the recommendations are. And having all that information reduces their anxiety. There are other people, though, who all of that information may cause more anxiety or maybe even more depression. So we want to kind of remind ourselves that everybody copes differently. And if you're the type of person who needs a lot of information and seeks that information out, and that provides you comfort during this time, then you need to find other people who cope similarly to you. And that might not be your partner or your spouse or your family member. It might be somebody at work or a friend or someone else in your life that you know is kind of seeking out the same type of information. If you're one of those people who feels like the more they learn, the more they read, the higher their anxiety is, the more it's impacting their sleep, maybe not being able to fall asleep or having nightmares, what we recommend is limiting your intake. And so what that can mean is we want you to stay informed about what's going on, but perhaps pick one media outlet and then only check it at one time per day. So you pick whatever outlet you trust the most, and maybe only check it at 7 o'clock in the evening for 15 minutes to kind of get an update on what happened that day, or those couple of days, whatever you decide. But somehow try to limit the intake that you have. If you're noticing that constantly seeing it on social media and on the local news, if it's becoming overwhelming for you, try to just limit the intake and be intentional about limiting the intake and making sure you're sharing with your family and coworkers that you're limiting your intake and that you're not able to kind of process any more of that information right now. The second thing is limit your expectations. So I really want to challenge you all to reevaluate the expectations that you have for yourself and for your family right now. Now is not the time to be an overachiever. It's not the time to be the most productive person in society and to do all of these home tasks and all of these things that we have been kind of conditioned to feel like we should be doing with all this quote unquote home time. Right now is not a break. There's a lot that's going on in the world that we're all trying to keep up with physically and emotionally. So use this time to kind of evaluate the expectations that you have for yourself and for your family members. There are a lot of changes that are happening in people's lives right now. So now is not the time to hold ourselves to these really high standards that are probably unrealistic given what's going on. So do what makes your life easier. So these are not normal circumstances that we're living under. It's not going to be this way forever. But do what you have to with yourself, with your partner, with your children, to do what makes your life easier during this period. So limit your expectations. Talk with your partner about kind of reevaluating the expectations for your home, for your children, all of those things, just to make sure that you're making this time easier to cope with. The third thing I want to talk about is, if possible, again, kind of keeping in mind limiting your expectations, but think about if there's a hobby or something that you used to enjoy a long time ago, and maybe you quit because of family obligations or work obligations or just time went on. Maybe sit back and reflect on something that you used to enjoy doing. Maybe it was reading a certain series of novels. Maybe it was doing something outside. But something that maybe you used to really like to do that just over the years you stopped. If you have the time and if you feel like it's realistic, given your current circumstances, that might be a good time to kind of re-engage in something like that. We're all having to kind of think outside the box and be creative about how we cope and take care of ourselves when we're really limited in what we can do and where we can go. So really kind of take the time to reflect back on some things that used to bring you joy that you might be able to still do today, and see if you kind of fall in love with that hobby again. So now might be a good time, if it's possible, if it's realistic, for you and for your family to kind of re-engage in something like that again. The other thing I want to talk about is increasing your movement. So this is not new to anybody. We all know physical activity is good for us no matter what time. But right now, especially as we're kind of reducing a lot of the activities that we're doing that bring us joy, which in fact kind of reduce our anxiety and reduce our depression and those kinds of things, at least we need to try to move our body. And so again, limit your expectations. We're not talking about doing a bodybuilding competition after this, but just move your body for 10 minutes a day. And that can look like whatever you want it to look like, whatever you enjoy. It could be a walk by yourself after dinner, for some kind of peace and quiet if you've been kind of home with the family all day. It could mean taking your family on a walk, your dog on a walk, you and just your partner going for a walk and having some alone time. Just thinking of ways that you can kind of increase movement while also respecting social distancing and those kinds of things that we're being asked to do right now. There are also a lot of free resources right now because everyone is kind of stuck in this position where we're not able to kind of get out and go to gyms and things like that. There are a lot of free classes online right now. So they're just for anything you could think of, from body weight exercises to interval training to yoga to Pilates, anything that you have an interest in, you can find it online for free right now. And most of those sites are all kind of for the next month or so going to be free. So I would take advantage of those things if there's a particular class or something like that that you think you'd be interested in, kind of taking advantage of the free things that are being offered right now, kind of given our current circumstances. And lastly, taking care of yourself first. I know this can be particularly troublesome and difficult for first responders because you're not used to prioritizing yourself, and most of the time you choose to prioritize others over your own needs. But you all know, as well as anybody else does, that if you are not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be valuable to anybody else. And so, or as valuable to anybody else that might need help. So I want you all to just kind of be aware of different signs of burnout, self-reflect on how you're feeling, how you're coping, how you sit down and kind of think about how you're doing right now. Are you noticing that you're more irritable? Are you having nightmares at night? Are you having a hard time falling asleep when you're at home? When typically that wasn't a problem for you before? Are you drinking more? Are you engaged in kind of different coping things that you feel like you're not comfortable with or maybe not satisfied with? But really just kind of sit back and think about how you're feeling and how all of this is impacting you. Everybody is under a lot of stress right now, and you all are on their front lines more now than ever before. And so there are a lot of additional pressures that are probably coming with the adjustments that you all are making on a regular basis with your jobs. So please just kind of take the time, do some self-reflection and think about how you're doing. Start to think about being aware of if you're acting differently at work, or if you feel like you're losing patience, or if how this is kind of impacting your ability to do your job and also engage with your family. So please just kind of take a pause and kind of think about how you're doing, and remember that if there is something that you want to change or something that you don't like, that you have people and resources like me that you can talk to and can kind of help you problem solve maybe different ways of coping right now. So lastly, I just want to kind of round off by saying I have some ideas for kind of how these conversations can go in the future. So some of those are talking about specific relaxation exercises or sleep tips, helping kind of set SMART goals and kind of tips for improving communication. We're all at home with our families a lot more now than we usually are. And that can be really challenging if we feel like we don't have good communication with them. And so maybe some tips for kind of improving communication could be helpful to you all during this time. But if you all have other ideas of something that you feel like you need right now that you're not getting, if you have additional topic ideas, please, my email is on the screen. Don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. And I look forward to hearing from you all, and I hope that you all are doing well, and I hope your families are well and safe, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon.